Hi everyone, welcome to our last panel of this series, Body Politics. And firstly, before I start this panel, I would like to say our condolences to Mahsa Amini's family in Iran and all Iranian family who are losing their families and children on the street during the heavy protests happening now in Iran, several cities. We are really sadly, and it's difficult for all of us mourning here far away from Iran. I'm Sara Madandar, for those who don't know me. I was honored to curate this exhibition. I'm working this project. I'm working with Ardeshir Trust, Ardeshir Mohassess Trust, and Dr. Behrooz Moazami asked me to curate this show, and I was so excited, and I did it. But I'm a visual artist. It was my first experience, and it was lovely to get to know more about Mohassess. And it was so special experience for me. So tonight is a special because we are ending our panel with these lovely panelists joining us tonight. I would like to introduce really shortly the panelists and then begin the panel. Shirin Neshat is here with us. Hi, Shirin. Shirin Neshat is an Iranian-born artist and filmmaker living in New York who works with the mediums of photography, video, and film. Marjane Satrapi is here with us from Paris, and actually it's middle of the night there, and thank you so much, Marjane, being with us tonight. Marjane is a French-Iranian graphic novelist, cartoonist, illustrator, film director, and children's book author. And Nicky Nodjoumi is here with us. Is an Iranian-born visual artist living in New York, and also Nicky is one of the trustees of Ardeshir Mohassess. And Mr. Behrooz Moazami is here. Behrooz is a professor of Middle Eastern History program at Loyola and also one of the trustees of Ardeshir Mohassess. So make it short that my goal was to just be short in the introduction because the panel is short tonight. It's only for an hour. And the next hour after that, we are going to show the documentary of rebellious artists. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Sara John. It was wonderful. Thank you. And I want to thank also Marjane and Shirin for being here. Thanks a lot. And Nicky, our old friend, Neshat, who had been coming from New York for this project. Thanks a lot, Neshat. And I came to know Ardeshir Mohassess in 1992, and since then I have become somehow a very close friend with him. And I have seen most of his work. I have been involved in 2 seminars. This is the second seminars I've been involved in organizing. And what I can see from my readings, from what I have heard from others, is that Ardeshir's work, we are just going on the scratching the surface. We are not doing a very much in-depth work of him. He's a great artist, and this is just the beginning of it. And I'll come back to this issue at the end and ask your opinion on what you expect us to do, so and so forth. With this introduction, I want to ask these questions from my beloved friends who are here. First, this week's panel is happening at the time that we were not sure that even to have it or not because of what's happening in Iran. And certainly it's quite important development that's happening. And we have seen this is what was perhaps Mohassess expecting it to happen. And my first question is from my panelists, my dear panelists, is how do they see themselves in face of this crisis? And how it's going to affect their artwork and their future? Thanks a lot. I'll start with Shirin.
Well, I think most likely every one of us are still trying to process what's going on. You know, it's been only a few days, and it's very difficult to focus on anything else. I think this is one of the biggest issues. This is a historical event that is happening live, you know, and it's really not possible to think about how so quickly process into an artwork. But I was really happy actually that we are talking about Ardeshir today because his work, it's so reminiscent of, you know, social critique, political critique, the protest. And I think I felt really excited that actually the time worked out that we can talk about Ardeshir's legacy and how as an artist he was sort of an activist, and he sort of made a translation of what's going on in his country in a very quiet way through his drawings. And he had a very sharp knife in terms of his criticism. And I think the only last thing I want to say for a lot of us artists like Nicky and Marjane is that we feel very vulnerable because on one hand, we want to be a part of the process and we want to be reacting like all others, but then we're also artists and it's very difficult to so obviously channel it in our work. It becomes almost too obvious, or so I think it takes a long time first to digest what's going on, and second to find a way to articulate a point of view, something that is adding to the ongoing conversation in the country. And I think Ardeshir did it better than most people I know as an artist.
Thanks, Shirin. We'll go to the Marjane now.
Well, hello. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm very happy to be here. I think the whole situation in Iran, I mean, there is this protest or other protest or what we have been through our whole life has absolutely shaped our work from the beginning. You know, this is another protest in this country in which, you know, our children are being killed, our girls, our young boys, everybody has to suffer. We have suffered this situation too, and that has had a direct result on whatever we have done in the work of Shirin. It's very obvious, and my work is very obvious, you know. So we are living with that. And talking about Ardeshir Mohassess is very important because he was known for his irreverence, and actually to change stuff, we have to be irreverent. And that is what the youth today of Iran is showing, their irreverence. They're actually standing, you know, like we never stood because we were too scared. This is another generation, the world has changed. But yeah, I mean, the story of our country has shaped us and has made us the people that we have become. So yes, you know, it is, I mean, none of us, like, you know, I'm not a press illustrator, so it cannot appear suddenly, you know, I will not make a press illustration and then it will have a direct effect. But it has an effect, but it is also lots of hope, you know, in this irreverence, in what we see. Either it leads to something bigger or not, it will have an effect forever because for the first time, are women that are actually standing to taking the scarf out of their head, and they are with men and boys. They're also with them, because just after the revolution, when the veil became obligatory in Iran, many women, they went to protest, but it was not so many men with them. Today is everyone, and this is this youth. So that gives us a lot of hope. And Ardashir is like a little bit a star in the dark night, to show us the way, because of his political cartoons. Because we cannot call that the really cartoons or illustration. Is beyond that. He's a real artist. To Iranian art was Toulouse-Lautrec was in the 19th century to the illustration and painting. He's more than just a political illustrator. He's actually a real painter. So yes, it will have an effect, like everything else that we have gone through. And unfortunately, we come from a country that these things has to happen very often. So yeah.
John, you?
The legacy of Ardashir would continue. I think this would be the time that he was waiting for, like 40 years, to see it, like all of us waiting to see that something happening in Iran. Ardashir would be sitting in the studio by himself and persuading the brave Iranian women to continue the demonstration and fighting this evil regime. So that's what the legacy is, and the legacy will continue, and all of us are waiting for the better result.
Thanks. Mohassess is known as a political artist. And you three are known as the political artist as well. I just want to know what is the connection? What have you learned from Mohassess here? What's in the art and in politics is important for Mohassess, is important for you three as well. Is there any connection there or not?
Ardashir has many dimensions to himself, and one of them that I learned from him is how to connect the humor and satire to the serious matter of politics. And the way he did it was so comfortably, so fluently, that I haven't seen anybody combine those things so nicely and beautifully. That's the things that affected me a lot.
I would like to know about others. Shirin and you, Marjane.
Marjane, you go.
Concerning the impact of Mohassess on your work.
Well, actually, I was very familiar with his work when I was since I was a child, because my parents would buy, like books, with Mohassess, with Kalikarmator and this and that. I knew, the whole Persian art, if you look at it, most of the time is actually to serve the power. For example, the best known Iranian work is the Persian miniature. But what is the Persian miniature? Is actually the king is from Mongolia. So all the people that are represented like Mongolians, with almond eyes. So it has very often, the art has been in the service of the power. So when you have somebody like Mohassess, he has an art which is not actually serving the power. And you can even see that, in the Iranian poetry, depending if the king is a Ghaznavi king, or if he is from Mongolia, or from this or from that, always, because they gave the money to the artists, so then the artists, they had to do what, you know, the power would tell them. So having somebody like Mohassess, who has always been irreverent, who has always been, you know, and laughing about something is a very powerful position. It's very easy to mourn about something and get serious about it, but when you start laughing about it, then this is where you get the power, because then you are bigger than the other person. You can laugh at him because you just put him in front of the absurdity of his acts. So this satire is something that I tried, you know, to keep in my work, not forgetting that, you know, is humor is so abstract, is the, you know, highest level of the abstraction, you know, of the language, because we all actually cry for the same reasons, all the human beings in the world, but we don't laugh actually for the same reasons. But something that makes you smile require actually, you know, you have to use your intellect, so you have to use your because of the abstraction. And he managed, you know, to, at the same time of making this extremely beautiful artwork, make it being political, and at the same time have the satire in it. So it's a combination that, of course, is a guideline for all of us. And I think that is actually the way that our population has always survived. I mean, seeing what we have gone through, all of us, I mean, the Persian humor has always been something that has saved us from not falling into very bad depression. This is, but actually making that as an art is something. Then at the same time, you know, I don't necessarily think that every
recording stopped.
Oh, recording stopped. Okay, so it said. So I don't necessarily think that as an artist you always have to be engaged and political. You know, I mean, already making art for art is it's good. And you know, as an Iranian also, you know, you'd never ask, for example, an American artist to only talk about, for example, the mischief of Trump. You know, they can do other things. So the Iranian artists should be the same thing. But in a way, all of us, we have done somehow, in a way or another, some political work. But yeah, he is the best combination of everything. He has done his art to the best, and at the same time, he has had something to talk about and something to criticize, and all of that. So yeah, it has had a big effect on me. So sorry for my English, because it's unlike you, you know, my second language is French, so sorry if I make mistakes.
Pretty good English. And no, I just wanted to add that, Behrooz, when I look back, you know,
Recording in progress.
all of my own work has been this interest of making a parallel between the people and people of power, and whether that is the monarchy or, you know, the religious people, the government, and I think that is the essence of Ardeshir's work, repeatedly, and I love the way he depicts and caricaturizes the people of power, whether it's the king or the mullah, and the ruling party, and the people themselves, and I think that's been the core of my work, and I've just really admired the way that he had a sense of humor that I didn't have, and I always feel like Marjane said, I admire anyone who could tackle all these very dark, disturbing stories, history, in a form of satire and absurdity and humor. But nevertheless, I think I learned from his work that basically that's the core of the Iranian problem, is years and years and years living under dictatorship. And Marjane's work, Nicky's work, and mine, one way or another, tell the very similar story. So I would say I was highly influenced by his work.
And you, Neshat John, you want to say something about that? How Mohassess influenced your work?
I've been friends. Tehran with Ardeshir since 1973. And before that, when I was the student of Tehran University, I knew of Ardeshir as a cartoonist. Through that progression, I learned, as I said, mostly the humor and satire, how it works, how it helps my work too. Ardeshir has a couple of, as I said, dimension. One is he's working as a subject matter. One subject matter is important. The other one is the execution of the work. I was always interested in execution of the painting and the drawing. So I was interested in Ardeshir to see how that execution would be combined with the political.
Sorry, I think that we're missing the conversation.
Okay.
I can't hear anything.
Is that?
Sorry, I think.
Okay. Is combined together, and Ardeshir would do it. I learned that one, and it helped me through my work.
Thanks. What I had seen in Ardeshir, and you had seen it as well, and Shirin has been writing, you and Shirin have been writing about it, is her freedom in drawing. That her drawing has become freer by the age and by his sickness. And can you explain what is the motive behind that very much freedom in expressing his ideas through drawing?
No. As I said, Ardeshir started being a cartoonist, and the function of the cartoonist was, exaggeration, make fun of people and things like that. That was not interest of me. At the time, I was a student of the Tehran University Faculty of Fine Arts. It is later on, through the watching him grow, to see how his attempt was to move and grow out of the cartoonist towards the art, state of art. And one of the things he would do, he would follow the international movement of caricature and cartoonists and artists in the whole world, including Germany, United States, France, and a lot of artists close to work of Ardeshir he was following, like Tupor in France, Saul Steinberg in United States, George Gross in Germany. All these people had influence of Ardeshir. Ardeshir look at the drawing, the lining, the composition. So all these things related to Ardeshir, and Ardeshir moved from native cartoonist to become an international artist. Think about how Ardeshir moves from being a cartoonist to the state of art that he was at the end of the life. And this took some time and some studies through international artwork to find out his own way.
Thank you, Nicky John. I actually have a question from Shirin John about her experience curating the previous show with Mohassess. And because I worked and curated this show, I wanted to hear more about your experience that time.
Sure. I mean, as you know, I worked with Nicky, and Nicky was a very old friend of Ardashir. So I had the privilege of getting to know Ardashir before he passed away. In fact, he came to see the exhibition, and I believe Nicky just soon after the exhibition was over, he passed. But it was really extraordinary, and I think. You were an artist and you curated this exhibition. For me, to wear this hat of being able to work around another artist's work, which I've done before when I was younger. I worked at a gallery, which I helped working on other artists' work. But it was really interesting to work with Nicky, who and Behrooz, who knew Ardashir's work so well, and being able to make the selections, going through his drawers, and then going through the collection of other people, and contextualizing his work within different styles, different periods, when he was healthy, when he was not healthy, like what Behrooz said, as he was ailing later in his life, his drawings became much looser, but still very powerful. And then some of his classic work that he did earlier. And it was just a magnificent, experience to be able to delve into somebody's history through their artwork. And it was also, I felt very painful and tragic to see the state that he was in at the end. Both in terms of his health and poverty, and the way that he in some ways maybe have been forgotten. But what's really amazing to see how his legacy now is living on, and in fact is, I would say, it's picked up even more. I mean, the last few years there's a real strong demand of Ardashir's work, critically, commercially, in every way. So I think it's always a good thing for artists to be able to put aside their own arts and really give their time and energy to discover another artist in that depth. And you learn so much, and certainly with Ardashir, it makes you really humble to see his suffering and his endurance in America alone as an immigrant, and eventually being so ill. And so it was an incredible celebration to do that show. It was unforgettable experience.
Thank you, Shirin John. Thank you.
What is the reason? Mohassess' work expressed freedom of drawing a lot. I mean, he moves very fast, and his drawing are very childish in many ways. And I cannot. Once we were talking about one work within his Mohassess work or not. Neshat said no, because of the way the drawings are done. So it's a very his signature, in fact, is his artistic signature, that is how he draws. What's your explanation of that? As an artist, how do you see that? Did I make my question clear?
To Marjane, right? Behrooz? Or Nicky?
You and Marjane. Nicky has already answered that.
I actually don't think that his drawings are childish. I think that the drawings are extremely free. What I see is, obviously, if you ask him, I'm sure of that, because to have this quality of freedom, because if you make something that is childish, you make it one time, is an accident, and then the second time happens another accident. When you see Mohassess' work, is actually a continuation, so it's a style. Style that means that he knows very well how to draw. If he decides to draw like that, is a decision. It's not because he does not know how to draw better. So I don't think that is a childish. I think it's extremely free, especially coming, from the background. Again, I'm talking about the Persian art, where everything, is always extremely symmetric, and everything has to be like this and like that. Suddenly, I mean, this is what was blow my mind when I was a child. When the first time that I saw his drawing, and I was painting, as a child, and I wanted to, to be a Rembrandt. I wanted to make like the most perfect painting that you could make. And suddenly I was in front of the work of this man, and I was like, this is so beautiful, and at the same time, it just breaks all the codes. See exactly the way he feels it. It reminds me of Jean-Michel Basquiat, who said, "Believe it or not, I know very well how to paint. It is not, if you think that what I paint is ugly, it's not me who draw the ugly things, is that the word is ugly." And I think it is, in this exaggeration of the trait, and, the exaggeration of what we can call a caricature or whatever, is actually showing, like how these people that he's drawing, they are. So that is actually the soul of these people appearing through this drawing. So I will call that a very free drawing. And coming from where we come from, he's one of the first one to have done that. The Iranian illustration, the press illustration, has always been extremely inspired by the Eastern European illustration. You can find the same kind of illustration in Poland. You have all the time this black and white. The way you use the line is it has been very, very influenced by this illustration. And suddenly you have him. He's like a free atom. That comes and just does exactly the way he wants to do it. And what is good also is that, yes, he's a cartoonist, sure, but at the same time, he's not like a press cartoonist. Like if you want to say my experience, I work with some magazines, so, having to react on the actuality. And so I draw something, but then, like I had something about this news now, so I draw something. And 1 month after, I realized that actually the reality is somehow different. And then I look at my own drawing and I'm like, fuck, why did I do that? I'm ashamed of myself because my point of view has changed. He gave himself the time to process the thing. And at the end, what it comes is not just an event that has happened day one, and then he reacts on this event that has happened this day. Is actually the portrait of the society, the portrait of the man of the street, the portrait of the dictator, the portrait of the one who has the power, the portrait of the protest. So giving it ourselves the time actually to digest and then do requires lots of courage, because meanwhile, while you're waiting to digest to actually do something that is valuable, you don't make money. So, you have to, as we say in Farsi, you have to eat air and shit bubbles. But that happens because you don't make money, because you have to have the time to do that. And for me, it has always been his freedom, and maybe his legacy. The biggest legacy is that it's actually possible to do that. It's actually possible to take your pen and say, this is the way I feel like drawing, and he drew it this way. But if you look at it carefully, as somebody who draws, I look at the drawing and I know that if you ask him to do something extremely realistic, he can do it, no problem. But the best abstract painter, first of all, they know very well how to draw, and then they become very good abstract painters. So what we see is the results of a style that he has developed to show actually, it's gross, but it's not because the situation is gross, because people are gross, because dictatorships, they are gross. That is not his drawing. He's just drawing what he sees. And the way he shows it is so beautiful in its exaggerated way. So this would be what I think. But at the same time, I'm not a historian of art or anything. It's just my feeling as somebody who draws. When I see that, I'm like, wow, he really knows what he's doing.
Thank you. Now, my question is, the name of the panel is Legacy of Adashi Mohassess. What do you think his legacy is? Nicky mentioned it a little bit, but I want to ask from you guys what you think his legacy is. And then from there, I want to ask another question. Not only from you, but from the audience and from everybody else on the social media. Please. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Well,
What
Yes,
is Ardeshir's legacy?
Well, I think for me, first of all, he has pioneered an art form in Iranian modern history, contemporary history, that is unprecedented. And I think he took the idea of satire and fine arts and he sort of collapsed it into one thing, which I haven't seen very much within the Iranian arts. But also, I think his legacy is of an Iranian artist who had to live in exile, and it's very different. His journey as a human being, as an artist, living in a foreign land under a difficult economic situation, far from his culture where it nourished him emotionally and artistically, and therefore he had to rely on his own imagination and intuition and spontaneity to take his art to the next level, which again, unfortunately, that together with his illness and all of that led to the work that he created. So I think I can summarize that in my mind, he is a pioneer of an art form that is unprecedented in Iranian modern history, art history. And the second is that he is one of the most significant Iranian immigrant artists that I can think of, that created such a large body of work outside of his country and that remained relevant regardless of the fact that he didn't live in the culture that he was born to, a culture that he was being critical of. And that, it's very optimistic for people like us, like Marjane, me, and Nicky, people who have spent most of their adult life and artistic career outside of their native land. And so, and making work that somehow tries to be relevant to our own community, but also the international community. So I think that's his second highest point of an artist, is that he made a mark that it's possible to leave your country but remain relevant to your country and still make major contribution artistically, and that in fact have even a broader audience. So yeah, I think he left a very significant, and I have a feeling it would just go on and live longer than maybe other artists who continue to live in their country. But I think he left a very big legacy.
And you, Marjan John?
I think for me, I mean, Shirin said it so beautifully. So, I mean, talking after her is going to be extremely dull. But I think his legacy, with his work, he shows that actually art is freedom. To make an artwork, you have to be free. And then for the freedom, you need to be free, you have to be you have to have some irreverence, and with his satire, he was extremely irreverent. And I think that without this irreverence, there is no art. So, this mixture of freedom and art and irreverence all go together. A polite art is not an art, it's just, some beautiful thing. So, his humor is, again, I come to the sense of humor is sometimes when, we do the as soon as we are doing, something, especially when it touches, subjects, like dictatorship or, like very serious subject, it's very easy to fall into, to become extremely serious. And as I said from the beginning, I think humor is a position of power, and for that you need to feel very powerful and very free. And I think I would say 4 words actually: his art, his freedom, his irreverence, and his satire. That is what would remain, and the quality of the drawing. And I completely agree with Shirin. That will continue. It will stay in the history of the Iranian art and even outside, because now we are talking, and you're in New Orleans, and hopefully it will continue for a long time. So, yeah.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Let me go to my last question, which is not only from you guys, but from the audience and from whoever who can listen to us. As you know, me and Nixon are running the Mohassess Trust. So this question is mostly our question as well. What you think this legacy has for us to do? What your expectation of the Mohassess Trust is, and what you want us to do? Now, let me say that this year I can talk certainly about future with a better energy, because of working throughout this conference, we came to know very young group of people very much interested in doing this, and we are asking this question from all of you to help us how we can better do our job.
Behrooz, are you also asking us or just asking the audience?
Asking you and the audience.
I just want to say one thing. I think you are doing an amazing job. I think I constantly hear about his work. You publish, you exhibit his work. There's such discussions. I think you're doing an amazing job. And also you have, informed so many other curators, and you're helping other curators who want to further expose his work to a larger audience, which I know Vali in London, many other scholars like him are extremely interested in showing his work to major institutions internationally. So had it not been for your efforts, Nicky's, and everybody else who was involved, and Sara, I don't think this would have been possible. So I think you're doing an amazing job, and I think that we will see in the next years even more of his work, because you're encouraging other curators and programmers, and you're providing them what they need, and that's really tremendous.
Thank you. How about you, Madandar?
Really, I'm really in a very bad position to give you a lecture about how to do better your job. I think I like Shirin. I mean, already having this foundation and making whatever you do is so great, is so big. I've never done anything like that myself in my life, so I'm not really in the position to give any advice, because my advices, they're just going to be useless. I don't know. I think you do a great job. What better can you do? Just keep on doing. Just keep on going forward. Show his work as you're doing. I would love to see like an exhibition of Moazami, for example, in Centre Georges Pompidou in Paris. I think it will have a great success. I'm certain about it. So yeah, just keep on doing it. Really, I don't know what to add.
How about the audience here? Please, Dr. Bhavnia.
Speaking about his legacy, I think the diversity of his work, the areas and arenas that he has touched upon, as Nicky said, for the first maybe 15, 20 years of his life, he was a cartoonist. Then we see him going to the Iranian Revolution, Iranian politics, post-revolution. Then his work that I have at least 80 of them in my collection about women. Then his works, the 200 plus work he did about the Holocaust. Then after that, going as Nicky alluded to, working as a painter and did all the beautiful, amazing painting. And there are not too many artists that have this kind of diversity in their work and this kind of evolution that he went through. And I think this is one of his legacy. And the other thing is, as Shirin alluded, and we all know, the volume of the work that he produced is, I think, is unprecedented. It's just unbelievable how many, I saw him the 3 months that he was guest at my home. In one day, he produced 10 works, 20 work, and every single one of them, when you analyze them, they are amazing thing that he was doing. The velocity, I mean, the speed of the work that he did, and the diversity, I think is something that, to me, is unprecedented, part of his legacy.
Well, last night we had this short discussion with Nicky, and Nicky said he's a genius. He is a genius. And I was sorry to say that I came to realize that late in his life, but he is a genius.
Sure is.
Okay.
Well,
It's working. Okay. As a member of the trust, I think we need a new generation get involved with the trust. Me and you getting too old. So we have to confront that reality and have a new generation to be able to be more active and to work harder in order to spread the legacy of Ardashiri. This is what we have to do. I think this is very important for us and everybody to know that we need that new generation to come forward and work with us. And thank you, Sara. Sara was really been fantastic, and you see how hard she worked for this event.
Thank you so much, Nicky John. I wanted to add, what, as Shirin John mentioned, I think Trust did an amazing job after Mohassess passed, and actually with this event. But one thing I think the Trust should focus afterward is archiving of Mohassess work. And actually we are going to work to have a website and archiving, and there are many of Mohassess works haven't shown to public yet. So with the curating shows in the future, we hope to show it to the public. So that one was one of the things I think a trust can work towards it, and maybe expand the team, and yeah.
as Nicky said, with the new generation, we hope to do so. So we're looking for your support and your interactions with us further. Not just saying it's good, go ahead, but getting your hands on and helping us.
I think there's something so timeless and universal about Ardashir's work, and I think the young generation, and it's so much about history, and I think that the young generation who may not be so familiar with his work in Iran, I think they'll be fascinated to learn more about a man who, you know, covered Iranian history and the revolution and protests at different times. I think you have a huge interest of a young generation of Iranians living in Iran who don't have access to his work and don't know it as well. So I think Nicky put his finger on the right thing. You need to perhaps bring among your community a different generation, but also not just generation, but people who are in Iran that could be educated about Ardashir, and that's what he really deserves, is to be seen more in his own country, as well as the international community, of course.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Shirin. Thank you. Anybody in the audience here wants to say anything? Okay, now, so we have to say goodbye and end the session. I'll pass it to Sara.
Okay, Shirin Jan and Marjane Jan, I would like to thank you for joining us tonight. And I know in Paris is late, and I would like to say goodbye. And we have audiences here sitting, and they're also saying goodbye. And we have some virtual audiences. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for bringing us together.
Thank you.